I was standing at the altar in my $8,000 wedding dress when my fiancé said the words that would destroy him. But let me back up, because you need to understand how perfect everything looked before it all came crashing down. My name is Sophia Chen, and 6 months ago, I was living what everyone thought was a fairy tale life. I was 29 years old, a successful architect at one of Chicago's most prestigious design firms, and I was about to marry Derek Matthews, the man I thought was the love of my life. Derek was 32, charming, successful in real estate development, and he had proposed to me on a yacht in Lake Michigan with a $12,000 ring that took my breath away. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. His ambition matched mine, his family loved me, and our future seemed limitless. The wedding was planned for June 15th at the Chicago Botanic Garden. 200 guests. A ceremony overlooking the Japanese garden with its reflection pools and carefully manicured landscapes. I had designed elements of the wedding myself because that's what I do. I create beautiful spaces, and I wanted our wedding to be a masterpiece. The reception was going to be in a custom-built pavilion with Edison lights strung overhead, live music from a 10-piece band, and a menu crafted by a James Beard-nominated chef. Everything was perfect. Everything was beautiful. Everything cost me $45,000. Yes, I paid for everything. Derek had convinced me that since his money was tied up in real estate investments, it made more sense for me to handle the wedding expenses. He promised he would pay me back after his next development deal closed. I didn't mind. I made good money as a senior architect, and I wanted our wedding to be spectacular. Besides, we were going to be married. His money, my money, it would all be our money soon anyway. That's what I told myself when I maxed out 2 credit cards and drained half my savings account. The morning of June 15th was perfect. Sunny, 75 degrees, with a gentle breeze that made the cherry blossoms dance in the garden. My bridesmaids were with me in the bridal suite, helping me into my dress. It was a custom Vera Wang creation with hand-sewn beading that caught the light like diamonds. My best friend Lily was my maid of honor. She'd been acting a little strange for the past few weeks, distant and distracted, but I attributed it to stress from work. We were business partners at an architecture firm we'd started together 3 years earlier, and we'd been juggling some difficult clients. I thought she was just overwhelmed. At 3 o'clock, the music started. My bridesmaids walked down the aisle first, their sage green dresses flowing in the breeze. Then it was my turn. My father took my arm, and we began the walk down the white runner that stretched between 200 chairs filled with everyone we knew. Friends, family, colleagues, clients. Everyone was standing, phones out, recording the moment. I could see Derek at the altar with his groomsmen, looking handsome in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo. Everything was perfect. I reached the altar. My father kissed my cheek and placed my hand in Derek's. The officiant began speaking about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. I was smiling so hard my face hurt. This was the moment I'd been dreaming about for 2 years, ever since Derek and I started dating. The officiant turned to Derek and asked him if he was ready to take his vows. That's when everything changed. Derek looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't love or joy or nervousness. It was something cold and calculating. He dropped my hands and took a step back. The officiant looked confused. The guests started murmuring. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. "I can't do this," Derek said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry, Sophia, but I can't marry you." The words didn't make sense at first. I just stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to laugh and say he was joking. But he wasn't joking. He was looking at me with something that looked almost like pity mixed with contempt. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, my voice barely working. "I can't marry someone so controlling and financially irresponsible," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent garden. "I thought I could overlook your flaws, but I can't. I won't spend my life with someone who doesn't understand how to manage money, who tries to control every aspect of my life, who suffocates me with her constant need for perfection." I felt like I'd been slapped. Every word he said was the opposite of reality. I wasn't controlling. I'd given him complete freedom in our relationship. Financially irresponsible? I had paid for everything, managed our expenses, saved for our future while he claimed his money was tied up in investments I never saw evidence of. This didn't make any sense. "Derek, what's happening?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Is this about the wedding? If you're nervous, we can talk about this. We don't have to do this right now." "I'm not nervous," he said. I'm certain that I can't marry you because I'm in love with someone else." The gasps from the crowd were audible. Someone's phone clattered to the ground. I heard my mother make a sound like she'd been punched. But I couldn't look away from Derek's face. He was smiling now, actually smiling, like he was enjoying this. "I'm in love with Lily," he said. "I have been for months. And she loves me too. We're meant to be together. And I'm not going to waste another moment pretending otherwise." I turned to look at my bridesmaids, at Lily specifically. She was standing there in her sage green dress, and she wasn't looking shocked or horrified. She was smiling. She was actually smiling. And then she started walking toward the altar, toward Derek, in front of 200 people and God and everyone I'd ever cared about. But here's what made it even worse. Lily was wearing a white silk slip under her bridesmaid dress. She reached up and unzipped the green dress, letting it fall to the ground, revealing a simple but elegant white dress underneath. She'd planned this. They'd both planned this. This wasn't a moment of panic or Derek getting cold feet. This was a coordinated, calculated public humiliation designed to destroy me. Derek took Lily's hand and looked at her with more love than he'd ever shown me. "I'm sorry I waited so long to be honest," he said to her, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But I'm choosing happiness now. I'm choosing you." They kissed. Right there at the altar where I was supposed to be getting married. My fiancé and my best friend kissed while 200 people watched in stunned silence. And then, hand in hand, they walked down the aisle together. They walked past my sobbing mother, past my father who looked like he wanted to commit murder, past friends and family who were too shocked to react. They walked to the parking lot where the getaway car was waiting. The car I had rented. The car decorated with "Just Married" signs and tin cans tied to the bumper. They got in and drove away together, leaving me standing at the altar in my $8,000 dress, holding a bouquet that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds. The garden was completely silent except for the sound of the fountain and someone crying softly. And then my phone started buzzing, and buzzing, and buzzing. I looked down and saw notification after notification flooding my screen. The wedding guests had posted videos to social media. Within minutes, the videos were being shared. Within an hour, they would be viral. Within 6 hours, the hashtag wedding ditched would be trending worldwide, and I would be the most publicly humiliated woman on the internet. I don't remember much about the immediate aftermath. My sister Maya, who's a criminal defense attorney, appeared at my side and guided me off the altar. My bridesmaids were crying. My parents were in shock. The guests didn't know whether to leave or stay. The reception was supposed to start in an hour, but obviously, there would be no reception. No first dance, no cake cutting, no toasts. Just the echo of Derek's words and the image of him kissing my best friend in front of everyone I knew. Maya took me to the bridal suite and helped me out of my dress. I sat on the couch in my slip and veil, scrolling through my phone with numb fingers. The videos were everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Everyone had posted their footage of the moment Derek announced he was leaving me for Lily. The comments were brutal. Some people were sympathetic, but most were speculating about what I must have done to drive him away. She must have been awful if he did this publicly. I bet she was cheating on him. She looks controlling, no wonder he ran. There's always two sides to every story. The narrative was forming in real time, and in that narrative I was the villain. Within 2 hours, Derek had posted on his social media a carefully crafted statement that made him look brave and honest. Today I made one of the hardest decisions of my life. I realized at the last moment that I was making a mistake, and I chose honesty over convenience. Sometimes you discover that the person you thought you loved isn't the person you're meant to spend your life with. Sometimes you meet someone who shows you what real love feels like. I'm sorry for any pain I caused, but I couldn't marry someone when my heart belongs to another. Life is too short to live a lie. The post got 50,000 likes in 3 hours. The comments were full of people praising his honesty and courage. You did the right thing. Better to end it now than after the wedding. So brave to follow your heart. Nobody mentioned that he'd humiliated me in front of 200 people. Nobody mentioned that he'd coordinated with my best friend to maximize my public embarrassment. Nobody mentioned that this level of cruelty suggested something much darker than a change of heart. Lily posted too. A photo of her and Derek kissing with the caption, "Sometimes the trash takes itself out. Living my best life with my real soulmate." The comments on her post were even worse. People I'd considered friends were congratulating her. "You two look so happy together. True love always finds a way. Congratulations on your courage." I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't stop torturing myself with evidence of my own humiliation. Maya eventually took my phone away. She made me drink water and eat something even though I felt like I would never be hungry again. She called our parents and told them to cancel the reception, return the gifts, handle all the logistics I couldn't even think about. And then she sat down next to me and said the words that would change everything. "Sophia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This isn't just heartbreak. This is strategic destruction. People don't plan something like this unless they're trying to accomplish something beyond just ending a relationship. We need to figure out what Derek and Lily are really after." I didn't understand what she meant at first. I thought she was just trying to make me feel better by suggesting there was some logical explanation for the cruelty. But Maya wasn't the type to offer empty comfort. She was a criminal defense attorney who'd built her career on reading people and understanding motive. If she thought something else was going on, she was probably right. "What do you mean strategic?" I asked. "I mean, Derek didn't just wake up this morning and decide to humiliate you. He planned this with Lily. They coordinated the timing, the white dress, the public announcement. This took preparation. People don't go to that much trouble unless they're trying to accomplish something specific. We need to figure out what that something is." We started going through everything systematically. Maya pulled out her laptop and created a timeline of the past few months. When did Derek and Lily's affair start? What changed in their behavior? Were there any financial transactions that seemed unusual? First, I couldn't focus. My brain kept replaying the moment Derek dropped my hands and announced he couldn't marry me. But Maya was relentless, asking questions, taking notes, building a case like she would for one of her clients. That's when I remembered something. About 3 months ago, Lily had suddenly announced she was leaving our architecture firm. She said she wanted to pursue solo projects and needed creative freedom. I'd been hurt by her departure but supportive. We'd worked out an arrangement where she would gradually withdraw her ownership stake over 6 months. She was supposed to make monthly payments to buy out her share of the business. Now that I thought about it, she'd only made one payment. She owed me tens of thousands of dollars for her share of the firm. "Pull up your business accounts," Maya said. "Right now." I logged into our firm's banking portal with shaking hands. What I saw made my stomach drop. The shared business account that should have had $87,000 in it was nearly empty. Only $3,000 remained. I clicked through the transaction history with growing horror. Over the past 3 months, there had been dozens of transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Payments for expenses that didn't exist. Reimbursements for supplies we never ordered. The money had been systematically drained from our business account, and Lily had the access codes to do it. "She stole from our business," I whispered. "She stole almost $90,000. Maya's expression was grim but not surprised. "That's motive. That's why they needed to destroy your credibility publicly. If you're painted as the unstable, controlling ex-fiancé, nobody will believe you when you accuse them of theft. They needed to get ahead of the narrative." We kept digging. I pulled up my personal accounts, my credit cards, my investment portfolios. Every account I shared with Derek or that he had access to. What we found was even worse than I imagined. Derek had been making charges on my credit cards for months. Expensive dinners at restaurants we never went to together. Hotel rooms in cities I'd never visited. Jewelry purchases from stores I'd never been to. He'd spent over $30,000 of my money on his affair with Lily, and I'd been too trusting, too busy with wedding planning and work to notice. But it got worse. The Maldives honeymoon I'd booked and paid for, a $15,000 trip with first-class flights and an overwater bungalow, Derek had changed the reservation. He'd called the resort 3 days ago and had them change the names on the booking from Derek and Sophia to Derek and Lily. He was taking my best friend on the honeymoon I'd planned and paid for, and there was nothing I could do to stop it because the reservation was non-refundable and I'd stupidly put it in his name as a romantic gesture. Maya documented everything. She took screenshots of every suspicious transaction, every unexplained charge, every piece of evidence that Derek and Lily had been systematically stealing from me while planning their betrayal. By 3 in the morning, we had a file that was over 100 pages long. Bank statements, credit card records, emails, text messages I'd saved. It was all there. The evidence of a calculated, long-term fraud designed to destroy me financially while humiliating me publicly. This is embezzlement, Maya said. This is fraud. This is identity theft. Sophia, your ex-fiancé and ex-business partner aren't just cruel. They're criminals. And we're going to make sure they pay for what they've done. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt angry. Instead, I just felt numb. Everything I'd believed about my life had been a lie. Derek had never loved me. He'd been using me as a bank account while conducting an affair with my business partner. Lily had never been my friend. She'd been stealing from our company while planning to humiliate me at my own wedding. The life I thought I was building had been a carefully constructed illusion designed to drain me dry. The videos of my humiliation continued to spread. By morning, the original footage had been viewed over 2 million times. News outlets were picking up the story. Local Chicago news ran a segment about the wedding that never was. Morning shows discussed whether Derek had done the right thing by being honest rather than going through with a marriage he didn't want. Relationship experts weighed in on the ethics of leaving someone at the altar. And through it all, I was painted as either a victim to be pitied or a villain who must have driven him away. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew what Derek and Lily had really done. Maya spent the morning on the phone with her contacts. A forensic accountant who owed her a favor. A private investigator who specialized in tracking down fraud. A prosecutor friend who worked in white-collar crime. By noon, we had a team assembled. By evening, we had a plan. We weren't just going to expose Derek and Lily's affair. We were going to expose their theft, document their fraud, and make sure they faced real consequences for what they'd done. The forensic accountant, a sharp woman named Patricia who wore designer glasses and had the disposition of a bloodhound, went through every financial record we could provide. She found things even Maya and I had missed. Fake invoices Lily had created for our architecture firm, billing us for subcontractor work that never happened and pocketing the money. Forged documents with my signature authorizing payments I never approved. Shell companies Derek had created to funnel money from our joint accounts into his personal investments. The total amount stolen wasn't $90,000. It was $142,000. They'd been systematically defrauding me for over a year. This is one of the most brazen cases of financial fraud I've seen in a domestic situation, Patricia said. They weren't just stealing. They were creating an elaborate paper trail to make it look legitimate. This took planning and coordination. This was their full-time job while pretending to be your partner and your friend. The private investigator, a former cop named Marcus with connections everywhere, tracked Derek and Lily to the Maldives. They'd left for the honeymoon the day after the wedding, posting photos from the airport with captions about new beginnings and following your heart. Marcus had contacts at the resort and was able to get copies of their charges. They'd upgraded to the presidential overwater villa at $3,500 per night. They'd booked couple spa packages for $2,200. They'd rented a private yacht for $8,000. Every single charge was on my company credit card that Lily still had access to. They weren't just taking my honeymoon. They were running up my credit cards while doing it. But Marcus got something even better. The resort had security cameras and microphones in common areas. He obtained footage of Derek and Lily having drinks on the beach, talking freely because they thought they were safe and anonymous on a private island halfway around the world. The audio was crystal clear. "I can't believe we actually pulled it off," Lily said in the recording, her voice full of excitement. "Did you see Sophia's face? She looked like someone had died. Derek laughed. She was so easy to fool. Thought she was so smart with her architect degree and her perfect plans. Never suspected a thing. The best part is everyone thinks she was the problem, Lily continued. All those posts about how controlling and difficult she must have been. We're the victims who escaped. We're the heroes of our own story. And now we have enough money to start our new life, Derek said. The business account, her credit cards, the wedding expenses she'll never recover. We probably cleared $200,000 when you factor in everything. That's enough to start the development company I've been planning. We'll be legitimate in 6 months, and by then, who's going to care how we got the startup capital? What if she figures it out? Lily asked. What if she realizes the money is gone and comes after us? Derek's laugh was cold. Who's going to believe her? She's the crazy woman who got left at the altar. We've already destroyed her credibility. If she starts making accusations, people will think she's being vindictive. By the time anyone takes her seriously, we'll have the money laundered through legitimate business investments. She can't touch us. Marcus sent me the audio file along with the video footage. I listened to it 3 times, and each time I felt something different. The first time I felt crushing betrayal. The second time I felt rage. The third time, I felt something cold and focused settle into my chest. They thought they'd destroyed me. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. Maya contacted the prosecutor's office with our evidence. Wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, forgery. The list of charges was extensive. But the prosecutor, a sharp young man named James who specialized in white-collar crime, told us we needed to be patient. We have enough to arrest them right now, he said. But if we wait until they return to the country, we can get them on more charges. Every day they spend in the Maldives using stolen credit cards is another count of fraud. Every transaction they make is more evidence. Let them dig themselves deeper, and then we'll bury them. So we waited. And while we waited, Derek and Lily continued their public victory lap. They extended their honeymoon from 1 week to 2, then from 2 weeks to 3. They posted photos constantly. Sunset dinners, couples massages, yacht trips, champagne toasts. Every post had captions about true love and following your heart and living authentically. The comments were full of people congratulating them on their courage and their beautiful relationship. Lily even did an interview with a lifestyle blogger, a popular influencer who ran a website about relationships and personal growth. The interview was titled, Following Your Heart, Even When It's Messy, One Woman's Journey from Friendship to True Love. In it, Lily talked about how she'd fallen in love with Derek but struggled with loyalty to me. She painted herself as someone torn between her heart and her obligations, ultimately choosing honesty over comfortable lies. She talked about how difficult it had been to hurt me but how necessary it was for her own authenticity. The interview got 50,000 shares and made Lily look like a brave truth-teller rather than a thief and a homewrecker. I didn't hide during those 3 weeks. I didn't retreat from public view or deactivate my social media accounts. Instead, I did something Derek and Lily never expected. I went back to work. I rebuilt my architecture firm with new partners, talented designers who'd been waiting for an opportunity to join a prestigious company. I reached out to clients and explained that there had been changes in company leadership. I worked 16-hour days, buried myself in projects, and created beautiful designs that reminded me why I'd become an architect in the first place. And while I worked, Maya and Patricia and Marcus and James built an airtight case. They tracked every dollar Derek and Lily had stolen. They documented every fraudulent transaction. They obtained warrants for their arrest. They contacted the airline and found out their return date. They coordinated with airport police to make sure Derek and Lily would be met the moment they landed on American soil. The arrest was scheduled for August 3rd, exactly 3 weeks after the wedding that never was. Derek and Lily were flying back from the Maldives through Los Angeles, then connecting to Chicago. They were scheduled to land at O'Hare International Airport at 2:15 in the afternoon. Maya made sure I knew the exact time and place. She also made sure the media knew, not by tipping them off directly, but by filing the criminal charges in a way that would be noticed by reporters who monitored the court system for interesting cases. I didn't go to the airport, couldn't. I was afraid that if I saw Derek and Lily in person, I would lose the composure I'd worked so hard to maintain. Instead, I watched the news coverage from my office, surrounded by my new team, waiting to see if justice would finally be served. The footage was everything Maya promised it would be. Derek and Lily came through customs at 2:30, tan and happy, pulling matching designer luggage. They were holding hands and laughing about something. Lily was wearing a white sundress and a wide-brimmed hat. Derek was in linen pants and a casual button-down shirt. They looked like the perfect couple returning from the perfect honeymoon. They looked like people who'd gotten away with something and knew it. They made it about 20 feet into the arrivals area before the police moved in. 6 officers, coordinated and professional, surrounded them in seconds. The look on Derek's face when he realized what was happening was the first moment of pure satisfaction I'd felt in 3 weeks. His tan face went pale. His confident smile disappeared. He actually looked around like he was searching for an escape route, but there was nowhere to go. "Derek Matthews, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft," the lead officer said, loud enough for everyone in the area to hear. "You have the right to remain silent." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "There's been a mistake," he said. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Lily Chen, you're under arrest as an accomplice to fraud and embezzlement," another officer said, handcuffing Lily while she stood frozen in shock. The best part, the part that made everything worth it, was that the local news was there. A camera crew from Channel 7 had been tipped off about a significant white-collar crime arrest at the airport, and they were rolling. Every moment was captured in high definition. Derek being handcuffed, Lily crying and protesting her innocence, both of them being led away while other travelers stopped to stare and record on their phones. Within an hour, the video was online. Couple arrested for fraud after lavish honeymoon funded by stolen money. The news story included background about the wedding that never was, about how Derek had left me at the altar only to be arrested 3 weeks later for stealing from me. The narrative was finally shifting. I wasn't the controlling ex-fiancé anymore. I was the victim of an elaborate fraud. And Derek and Lily weren't the brave truth-tellers. They were criminals who'd stolen $142,000 and then celebrated by taking a lavish vacation on their victims' credit cards. The news coverage exploded. Every outlet that had covered the original wedding story now covered the arrest. The daytime talk shows brought in legal experts to discuss the charges. Social media flooded with people apologizing for their original comments defending Derek. The hashtag Justice for Sophia started trending. My phone rang constantly with reporters asking for interviews, but I didn't answer. Not yet. I had one interview planned, and it was going to be on my terms. 2 days after the arrest, I sat down with Channel 7 for an exclusive interview. I'd hired a media coach to help me prepare, and I'd practiced my talking points until they felt natural. I wore a navy blue dress, minimal makeup, and my mother's pearl necklace. I looked professional, composed, and completely in control. The interviewer, a sharp woman named Jessica who'd built her career on getting to the truth, started with the obvious question. "Sophia, take us back to your wedding day. What was going through your mind when Derek called off the ceremony?" I took a breath and told the truth. I was confused more than anything. Derek and I had been planning this wedding for a year. We'd never had a conversation about doubt or hesitation. The night before the wedding, he told me how excited he was to start our life together. So when he stopped the ceremony and said he couldn't marry me, my first thought was that something terrible had happened. Maybe a family emergency. Maybe a health issue. It never occurred to me that he and my business partner had been planning this for months. "You didn't know about the affair between Derek and Lily?" I had no idea. Lily was my best friend. We'd known each other since college. We'd started a business together. I trusted her completely. The idea that she would betray me like that they would coordinate my public humiliation, it was beyond anything I could have imagined. Jessica leaned forward. "And you've since discovered that the betrayal went beyond infidelity. Can you explain what you found?" This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I pulled out the folder of evidence Patricia had prepared. Bank statements, credit card records, forged documents. I showed everything to the camera, explaining calmly and clearly how Derek and Lily had systematically stolen from me for over a year. I explained the fake invoices, the fraudulent charges, the shell companies. I showed the receipts from the Maldives proving they'd taken my honeymoon and upgraded everything using my credit cards. I played the audio of them on the beach admitting their plan and laughing about how easy I was to fool. This wasn't just about ending our relationship, I said, looking directly into the camera. This was a calculated, long-term fraud. They didn't just break my heart. They stole my money, destroyed my business, and tried to ruin my reputation so that nobody would believe me when I discovered what they'd done. But I did discover it, and now they're facing the consequences. The interview was 23 minutes long, and every second was powerful. Jessica asked tough questions, and I answered them honestly. She asked if I felt responsible for missing the signs, and I said yes. I wished I'd been less trusting. She asked if I still loved Derek, and I said no, you can't love someone you never really knew. She asked what I wanted people to know, and I said I wanted other victims of fraud to understand that it's not their fault, that criminals are skilled at deception, and that there's no shame in being betrayed by people you trusted. The interview aired that evening during prime time. It was watched by over 2 million people in the Chicago area alone. By the next morning, it had been viewed 15 million times online. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support flooded my email and social media. Other women reached out to tell me they'd been victims of similar scams. Law enforcement agencies contacted me to ask if I'd be willing to speak about financial fraud and how to recognize the warning signs. But the most important response came from the legal system. Derek and Lily were denied bail because the judge considered them flight risks with access to stolen funds. They were both sitting in county jail awaiting trial. Derek's real estate license was suspended. Lily's professional reputation as an architect was destroyed. Both of their families released statements condemning their actions and refusing to post bail even if it had been allowed. And then the dominoes really started falling. The private investigator Marcus discovered something we hadn't known. Lily was married. She'd gotten married 5 years ago to a man named David Chen, and she'd never filed for divorce. That meant her relationship with Derek wasn't just an affair. If they'd gone through with their plan to get married in Bali like they discussed on that beach recording, it would have been bigamy. Additional charges were filed. Derek's family came forward with more information. His mother called Maya and told her that Derek had been stealing from them too. He'd taken out credit cards in his father's name, forged checks from his mother's account, and borrowed money from his grandmother that he'd never repaid. They wanted to press charges. More counts of fraud and identity theft were added to his record. Former clients of our architecture firm reached out to say they'd suspected Lily of inflating bills and charging for work that was never done. They provided receipts and contracts that showed a pattern of fraud going back 3 years. It turned out I wasn't her first victim. She'd been systematically stealing from our clients, and I'd been too trusting to notice. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 15th, exactly 3 months after my wedding day. Maya represented me in the civil proceedings while the state handled the criminal case. Derek and Lily both had public defenders because they'd spent all their money on the Maldives trip and couldn't afford private attorneys. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The audio recordings, the bank statements, the forged documents, the testimony from multiple victims. Their lawyers advised them to take a plea deal. Derek accepted 7 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 4. Lily, because of her prior pattern of fraud and the bigamy charge, accepted 9 years with the possibility of parole after 6. Both of them were required to pay full restitution of $142,000 plus interest and legal fees. The total came to $487,000. Since neither of them had any money, their wages would be garnished for the foreseeable future once they were released from prison. They would be paying me back for decades. The civil trial was scheduled for October, but it never went to trial. Derek and Lily's lawyers knew they had no defense against the mountain of evidence we'd assembled. They agreed to a settlement that gave me everything. Derek's real estate holdings, including 2 rental properties he'd purchased with money he'd stolen from me, were transferred to my name. Lily's car, her jewelry, her personal assets, all of it became mine to liquidate and apply toward the restitution. I even got the engagement ring back, the $12,000 ring Derek had given me. I sold it and used the money to take my parents on the vacation they'd missed because they'd been dealing with my wedding disaster. But the real victory wasn't the money or the prison sentences or the assets I recovered. The real victory was what I built from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. 3 months after the arrest, I officially launched Phoenix Design Studio, my new architecture firm. I hired 3 of the women Lily had previously scammed, talented designers who'd been victims of her fraud at earlier companies. Together, we created a company culture based on transparency, trust, and treating people with the respect they deserved. We implemented financial controls and accountability measures that would make it impossible for anyone to commit fraud without being caught immediately. Our first year, Phoenix Design Studio made $2 million in revenue. By our second year, we tripled that. I was featured in Forbes magazine in an article titled, "How She Built an Empire from the Ashes of Betrayal." I spoke at conferences about business ethics and fraud prevention. I became an advocate for victims of financial abuse in relationships. The humiliation I'd experienced at my wedding became a platform to help others avoid the same fate. 6 months after the trial ended, I received a letter from Derek. It was forwarded through Maya's office because I'd made it clear I wanted no direct contact. The letter was 8 pages long, handwritten, full of apologies and excuses. He claimed he'd been manipulated by Lily, that he'd never meant to hurt me, that he'd been in a dark place and made terrible decisions. He begged for forgiveness. He asked me to drop the civil enforcement so his parents wouldn't lose their home when his assets were seized. He promised to pay me back every penny if I would just give him a chance to make it right. I read the letter once. Then I had it framed and hung it in my office with a caption underneath that read, "Some people mistake kindness for weakness. They learn." It was a reminder to myself and to everyone who worked for me that compassion and strength weren't mutually exclusive. I could be kind and generous and trusting while also maintaining boundaries and demanding accountability. Derek had mistaken my kindness for weakness, and he'd learned the hard way that I was much stronger than he'd ever given me credit for. I never responded to his letter. There was nothing to say. Derek and Lily had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. I had made my choices too, and I was living with those consequences as well. The difference was that my choices were building something beautiful while theirs had destroyed everything they'd touched. 1 year after the wedding that never was, Phoenix Design Studio held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for our new downtown office. It was in a renovated historic building that I'd designed the restoration for. Glass and steel and natural light, creating spaces that made people feel inspired and hopeful. 100 people attended the ceremony. Clients, employees, industry colleagues, and reporters. My parents were there, proud and smiling. Maya was there, taking credit for pushing me to fight back instead of giving up. Even Marcus and Patricia and James, the team who'd helped me build the case against Derek and Lily, came to celebrate. And there was someone else there. His name was Marcus Chen. No relation to Lily despite sharing a last name. He was an architect I'd met at a professional conference 3 months earlier. We'd started talking about sustainable design and discovered we had similar philosophies about creating spaces that served communities rather than just generating profits. We'd had coffee, then dinner, then more dinners. He was kind and honest and treated me with respect. He made me laugh. He didn't try to rush me into anything or push past my boundaries. He understood that I needed to rebuild trust slowly, and he was patient with that process. As I cut the ribbon on my new office, surrounded by people who'd supported me and celebrated with me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt proud. Not just of the business I'd built or the justice I'd achieved, but of who I'd become through the process. Derek had tried to break me with public humiliation and betrayal. Instead, he'd freed me to build something he could never touch or destroy. Myself. The final chapter of this story came 4 years later. Derek was released on parole after serving 4 years of his 7-year sentence. I know this because the victim notification system sent me an alert. He moved back in with his parents and got a job at his brother's hardware store, making minimum wage with most of his paycheck garnished to pay restitution. Lily was still serving her sentence, denied parole twice because of behavior issues in prison. She would likely serve the full 9 years. Phoenix Design Studio was now worth $15 million. We employed 40 people across 2 offices. I'd been named Chicago Businesswoman of the Year. I'd published a book about rebuilding after betrayal that became a bestseller. And Marcus and I got engaged. A quiet proposal on the beach in Hawaii. Just the 2 of us and the sunset. We'd gotten married 6 months later in a small ceremony with 30 guests. No cameras, no viral moments. Just love and commitment and the promise of building something real together. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how publicly I handled Derek's betrayal, if I wish I'd dealt with it privately instead of making sure the world knew what he'd done. My answer is always the same. Derek chose to humiliate me publicly. He chose to destroy my reputation in front of 200 people and millions of internet strangers. All I did was make sure the truth was told just as publicly as his lies. If that makes me vindictive or harsh, so be it. I prefer to think of it as justice. The last time I thought about Derek was when I received the final restitution payment. It took him 4 years, but he finally paid back every penny he'd stolen from me, with interest. The check arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered to Maya's office with a note that said simply, "Paid in full." I deposited the check, added the money to my investment portfolio, and never looked back. Because here's the truth that Derek never understood. He thought ending our wedding in public would break me. He thought destroying my reputation and stealing my money would leave me powerless and defeated. He thought he'd won by taking my fiancé status, my best friend, and my financial security all in one calculated blow. But he was wrong about everything. He didn't break me. He freed me. He freed me from a relationship built on lies, from a friendship that was never real, and from the illusion that my worth was tied to someone else's perception of me. I built an empire from the ashes of his betrayal. I created a life more successful and fulfilling than anything I'd imagined when I was planning that wedding. I found real love with someone who valued honesty and integrity. And I became the kind of woman who doesn't let anyone, not an ex-fiancé or a former friend or a cruel internet mob, define who she is or limit what she can achieve. Derek thought his actions would turn my world upside down. He was right about that. But what he didn't expect was that when my world turned upside down, I would land on my feet, stronger and more successful than ever before. And that, ultimately, was his biggest mistake. He underestimated me. And by the time he realized his error, it was far too late to do anything but pay the price for what he'd done. So to anyone watching this video who's experienced betrayal or public humiliation or financial abuse, I want you to know something. You are stronger than the people who hurt you. You are more resilient than they give you credit for. And when someone tries to destroy you, they're actually giving you an opportunity. An opportunity to shed everything that wasn't serving you, to rebuild on your own terms, and to become the person you were always meant to be. Take that opportunity. Build something beautiful from the ashes. And never, ever let anyone convince you that their betrayal was your failure. It wasn't. It was theirs. And eventually, inevitably, they will face the consequences while you're busy living the life they thought they'd taken from you. That's my story. The story of how my fiancé ended our wedding in public, thinking it would break me, never expecting that his world would turn upside down instead. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing, because the life I have now, the person I've become, the business I've built, and the love I've found, none of it would exist if Derek hadn't freed me from the illusion of our relationship. So in a way, even though he'll be paying me back for the rest of his life, I owe him a debt too. A debt of gratitude for showing me exactly who he was before I made the mistake of actually marrying him. Thank you, Derek, and goodbye.